Imagine being locked in a room, debating a single legal case for 5 straight months. That's not an exaggeration. The jury in the 1992 People versus Sabel trial in California holds the grim record for America's longest jury deliberation, stretching an unprecedented 29 weeks. This wasn't some complex federal antitrust case. It was a relatively straightforward state criminal trial involving charges of assault with a deadly weapon and attempted robbery. How could 12 ordinary citizens take 148 days, costing taxpayers an estimated $500,000 to decide guilt or innocence? The answer lies not just in the evidence, but in the human psychology of legal decision-making and the surprising vulnerabilities of our justice system. This wasn't just a long trial. It was a legal and emotional marathon that pushed everyone involved to their breaking point. What could possibly prolong a verdict for so long? The case itself centered on John Sabel, accused of shooting a man during an attempted robbery in Los Angeles. The prosecution presented eyewitness testimony, ballistics evidence, and Sabel's own alleged admissions. The defense argued mistaken identity, and that Sabel was coerced into making false statements. On the surface, it seemed like many other criminal trials. The judge, attorneys, and even the jurors themselves initially expected a verdict within a few weeks, perhaps a month at most. The trial itself had lasted a substantial 3 months, but jury deliberations rarely exceed a few days, maybe a week for truly complex matters. The prospect of 29 weeks was unfathomable. What started as a standard jury duty summons quickly morphed into a life-altering commitment for these 12 individuals, with their personal lives put on indefinite hold. Why did this seemingly ordinary case spiral into an extraordinary deadlock? A crucial factor in any jury deliberation, and especially in the Sabel case, is the judge's instructions. Before deliberations begin, the judge reads aloud a lengthy, often complex set of legal guidelines. These instructions explain the law, define terms like reasonable doubt, and outline what the jury must prove to convict. In the Sabel trial, these instructions were voluminous, over 150 pages long. Imagine trying to absorb and apply intricate legal definitions to weeks of testimony. Jurors often struggle with this, and misunderstandings can lead to prolonged debate. If one juror interprets intent differently from another, or misapplies the burden of proof, it can create a fundamental disagreement that's incredibly difficult to resolve. This isn't just about facts. It's about navigating the labyrinthine language of the law itself, a challenge many citizens are ill-equipped for. But beyond the sheer volume, how did the jury actually attempt to break down these complex legal concepts? Once inside the jury room, jurors begin by electing a foreperson who acts as a moderator. They then typically review the evidence, discuss witness credibility, and apply the judge's instructions to the facts. The goal is to reach a unanimous verdict, meaning all 12 jurors agree. In the Sabel case, the initial votes quickly revealed a deep division. Some jurors were convinced of Sabel's guilt, while others held firm on his innocence. The process often involves rereading transcripts, examining physical evidence, and even sending notes to the judge asking for clarification on legal points. For 29 weeks, these 12 people essentially lived in a pressure cooker, day in and day out, trying to persuade each other. They revisited every piece of testimony, every exhibit, countless times. But the sheer volume of discussion alone doesn't explain the deadlock. What specific internal dynamics played out inside that room? Beyond the legal complexities, human dynamics played a massive role. The Sabel jury experienced significant personality clashes and interpersonal conflicts. When 12 individuals are forced into close quarters for months, under immense pressure, friction is inevitable. Reports from the jurors after the trial revealed deep-seated animosities, strong personalities attempting to dominate, and even accusations of bullying. Some jurors felt others were too emotional, while others believed certain individuals were simply unwilling to listen or compromise. Imagine trying to logically debate evidence when you genuinely dislike the person across the table. These personal struggles often became intertwined with the legal arguments, making it nearly impossible to separate the facts from the emotional baggage. This wasn't just about reasonable doubt. It was about stubbornness, ego, and the inability to find common ground. And it highlights a common mistake many people make about jury duty. Here's a common myth. Many believe jury deliberation is a purely rational, evidence-based process where the facts speak for themselves. The Sabel case powerfully debunks this. While evidence is paramount, the human element, individual biases, prior experiences, emotional responses, and even personal chemistry among jurors can profoundly impact the outcome and duration of deliberations. It's not just about what the evidence says, but how each juror interprets it through their own unique lens. The idea that jurors are blank slates, impartially weighing facts, is often far from the truth. They bring their entire life experiences into that room, which can lead to vastly different conclusions even from the same set of facts. The Sabel jury didn't just disagree on evidence. They disagreed on how to think about evidence, making consensus an almost impossible dream. But what happens when a jury simply cannot agree, no matter how long they deliberate? After 29 weeks of agonizing deliberation, the jury in People versus Sabel eventually declared itself hopelessly deadlocked. The judge had no choice but to declare mistrial due to a hung jury. This means the jury could not reach a unanimous verdict, either guilty or not guilty. When this happens, the prosecution has a choice. They can retry the case with a new jury, offer a plea bargain, or drop the charges entirely. In Sabel's case, the prosecution, facing the astronomical costs and the sheer exhaustion of the first trial, opted for a plea bargain. Sabel eventually pleaded no contest to a lesser charge and was sentenced to time served. A hung jury isn't a victory for either side. It's a failure of the system to reach a definitive resolution, costing significant resources and leaving the initial questions unanswered. But the costs extend far beyond just the financial. What impact did this have on the jurors themselves? The toll on the Sabel jurors was immense. 5 months away from their jobs, families, and normal lives. Imagine the financial strain, the emotional exhaustion, and the psychological burden of constantly revisiting gruesome details and intense arguments. Some jurors reported suffering from depression, anxiety, and even PTSD-like symptoms after the ordeal. Their lives were put on indefinite pause, only to end in a hung jury, feeling as though their immense sacrifice had been for nothing. While jurors are compensated a small daily stipend, often around $15 to $50, it barely covers lost wages or the emotional cost. One juror calculated their actual lost income was over $10,000, not to mention the stress. This highlights a critical, often overlooked aspect of jury service. It's not just a civic duty. It's a profound personal sacrifice, especially in cases like Sabel's. So, what specific steps did the judge take to try and break the deadlock? When a jury appears deadlocked, a judge might issue an Allen charge, sometimes called a dynamite charge. This instruction encourages jurors to reconsider their positions in light of the majority's opinion, without abandoning their honest convictions. It's a delicate balance. Encourage movement without coercing a verdict. In the Sabel trial, the judge issued several Allen charges, each time hoping to break the impasse. He also allowed for more time, hoping that continued discussion would lead to consensus. However, in this particular case, the Allen charges seemed to only deepen the divisions, with some jurors feeling pressured and digging in their heels further. This strategic use of judicial power backfired, reinforcing the stubbornness rather than resolving it. While effective in many cases, it shows the limits of external pressure on deeply entrenched internal disagreements. But what could have been done differently to prevent such a protracted deliberation? While extreme cases like Sabel's are rare, there are ways to potentially reduce the risk of prolonged deliberations. Improved jury selection, known as voir dire, is key. Attorneys can use this process to identify and remove prospective jurors who may have strong biases or be unable to work constructively in a group. Providing clearer, simpler jury instructions, perhaps with visual aids or opportunities for immediate Q&A, could also help. Some legal experts advocate for mini trials or summary jury trials in civil cases, where an advisory jury gives a non-binding verdict, helping parties settle. For criminal trials, continuous training for judges on managing difficult jury dynamics is crucial. The goal is to identify potential friction points early and address them before they fester for months. The Sabel case became a stark lesson in the need for proactive management. But what if a trial is truly complex, with mountains of evidence? In truly complex cases, such as intricate financial fraud or multi-defendant RICO trials, the sheer volume of evidence and legal concepts can overwhelm any jury. One potential solution is to allow jurors to take notes more freely or even ask questions directly, with judicial oversight to clarify points during the trial itself. Another involved providing jurors with laptops or tablets preloaded with evidence and transcripts, allowing them to easily access and review information during deliberations, rather than relying solely on memory or shared physical documents. Some jurisdictions even experiment with allowing jurors to discuss evidence among themselves during breaks, rather than waiting until the very end to identify misunderstandings early. The aim is to empower jurors with better tools and processes to manage complexity, preventing the kind of information overload that often contributes to deadlock. However, these are still relatively new approaches. And what does this all mean for you? The People versus Sabel case stands as a powerful reminder that the American justice system, while striving for perfection, is fundamentally human. Its greatest strengths are also its greatest vulnerabilities. The lesson for us is this: jury duty is not merely an obligation. It's a profound responsibility to engage critically, listen actively, and contribute to a unanimous decision, even when it's difficult. Your role, if called, is to apply the law as instructed, not to impose your own personal sense of justice. Understanding the potential for deadlock, the importance of clear communication, and the human factors at play can help you approach jury service with the seriousness it demands. It also underscores why clarity in legal writing and judicial instruction is so vital to ensure justice isn't delayed indefinitely. The system relies on 12 individuals overcoming their differences, a task often harder than it sounds. What happens when a jury misinterprets the law entirely? The People versus Sabel trial exposed the immense pressure and cost of a deeply divided jury, reminding us that justice isn't always swift or simple. The longest deliberation in U.S. history serves as a critical case study in the human element of law. If you're now wondering what happens when a juror intentionally lies during jury selection, known as voir dire, and how that can unravel an entire trial, watch that video next. Understanding these intricacies helps us appreciate the delicate balance of our legal system. Don't forget to subscribe for more true U.S. legal cases and courtroom stories told simply.